Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother Asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today we are going to have a discussion titled Sumerians, Thickness, and the Inability to Read the Room. This is a response to the latest or a recent video from Kamjiverse. He is someone who is, I've had online discussions with, and there's a consistent theme of the inability to comprehend what is being said, as well as uh, what I'm going to discuss today, the inability to read the room. And all that and more will return in just a moment. And we are back. I want to welcome each and every one of you for listening to. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and watching the program. And I appreciate each of you coming, whether you are, watching this in the premiere or you are catching the archive. Either way it goes, much love and appreciation to you. And you can show love and appreciation by clicking the like button and sharing with friends and colleagues. And if you are new to the channel, I encourage you all to subscribe. And we're getting closer and closer to our 10,000 subscriber goal. So, if you are new, help us reach that goal by subscribing to the program. And so, without further ado, we're going to get into the program. So, as y'all know, I haven't been on in a while. My studies on artificial intelligence and data science, which is very math intensive, has taken up so much of my time. So I don't do as many live streams and things as much anymore, which I plan on getting back to it when things kind of slow down. Um, but you know, every now and then, people think because my absence that they are that this is prime just to say anything and somebody won't respond. So we have this individual who goes by the name of Kamjiverse. He's an individual who never shows his face. He just likes to talk behind computer screens, and he's just always wrong about almost everything. And this is just one of those cases. So what I'm going to do first is show you a video that he did. It's a short video. It's about 2 minutes long, just a little over 2 minutes long. And so I'm going to be referencing things throughout this conversation from that video. So I won't, because I uploaded it to the program here, I won't be able to pause and make a commentary. So we're just going to let the video play through. And when you have finished watching the archive, you can come back to the beginning and pause if necessary, if you kind of miss something in that 2 minute window. And so in the video, he is addressing a Facebook post that I made over a year ago. And what he doesn't realize is that the Facebook post was made in jest, and we'll get into a little bit of that later. Um, and I haven't had access to my Facebook account for over a year because it was hacked, and it took me about to like last month or so for it to finally be given back to me. So I haven't had access to the account. I haven't posted in over a year, right? So so I had to create another account and alike. But what, because he and I aren't friends in real life or online, uh, he doesn't know the nature of how I run my Facebook page. My Facebook page has a lot of serious commentary, and then there are others commentaries that I have that are not so serious. And so those who engage with me regularly, they know when I'm playing and they know when I'm not. Uh, because he and I do not have any kind of relationship whatsoever and never have, he's not in that camp. So he doesn't know how to read the room and read context clues, right? And so with that being said, we are going to listen to the video or watch the video, and then I'm gonna have my commentary and response to what he said in the video. So let me just uh, give a black background because it's a slim video made for the cell phone. So, and here we go.
Some YouTubers will say or do anything to sell the idea that the Sumerians were black, even posting blatant lies. An advocate of the Black Sumerian pseudo-linguistics, Harold Johnson, aka asarimhotep, asserted that based on the curves and thickness of American black women, they descend from ancient Sumerians. His basis? He claims Sumerian terms describe heavy, thick, and sexually mature. If true, his descriptions would fit any woman, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, or white. Millions of women worldwide meet those descriptions. Yet if they're black, then they're Sumerian. No Sumerian inscription mentions women as heavy, thick, or sexually mature. He claimed Sumerian, cool, heavy, thick, sexually mature. This is false and misleading. In fact, cool has multiple meanings, but never refers to human sexuality or thickness. As geshkul, it means wooden handle, appearing dozens of times from early dynastic through Neo-Babylonian periods. As ukul, it means plant or weed, found over 100 times. In one case, kulkul means to be beautiful in Neo-Assyrian. As a noun, kul can mean bowl, or to collect, glean, or remove. Although some lists say kul means to be heavy, there are 0 known instances of that in actual inscriptions. The electronic Pennsylvania Sumerian Dictionary marks this as unattested. The correct Akkadian term for to become heavy is kabatu. Other cited words also fail scrutiny. Gur means thick or big, but refers to objects, not people. Liblu refers to sheep fat, not human body types. Pesh can mean innards, to breathe, descendant, or pregnant, but not thick sexually. Agi means to deflower, not sexually mature. Ma refers to animal maturity, like producing milk, not human sexual readiness. His choice of Sumerian words alleged as cognates with chaluba won't work. None hold the claimed definitions. He fabricated heavy, thick, sexually, and mature from thick. They're all false cognates.
And so you get the gist of the video that was just played. And so it was so much said and so much added to the discourse that wasn't said or implied. And so before we get to that, we're going to go to the latest Facebook page just to show you, give you an idea of what it is that I mean when I say share. So hopefully y'all can see that. Um, so this is one of the latest Facebook posts. Let's see if I can make that bigger. Right. So I made a post on the 25th of June uh, where I create an AI image of myself in a suit, uh, and I make the claim that I'm running for Congress, and that one of the first things that I would do if I run for Congress is to present a bill on the floor called the Man Stop Lying 2026 bill. And it will require everybody who pretends to have, Native American ancestry and that we have always been here and we're not Africans to get DNA tests from the top three DNA companies, and so that we can look at their haplogroups and their autosomes to get a full picture of it. So, for those who follow me on my page, they see this. This is stuff like this for me is regular. And I say here that I'm going to address also the Hebrew Israelites and people who claim to be of the lost found tribe of Shabazz. It's a joke, right? However, because it just kind of depends on when and how you meet me, some people don't know that it's a joke and are, and only read like the first sentence. And so I was getting inbox messages of people congratulating me for for becoming or for running for Congress, right? And wanting to show their support and where they, asking where they can send their donations and all this. I even got a phone call from my mother all the way in Texas, and she was congratulating me for running for Congress. And I had to tell her, "Ma, no, this is a joke. This is not serious." And so, it just gives you some context for uh, how to, you got to read my post and know the context, because some of my posts may be the result of previous posts or conversations that you don't know. So if you take something from my Facebook page and don't understand the context of why it's being stated or whatnot, you can end up like Kamjiverse, and be in the land of delusion and arguing with yourself about stuff that isn't serious. So um, so I will remove that, and what we're going to do now is I'm going to um, do a presentation. So I'm going to add, let me first stop sharing that. And we're going to add this. So I'm going to make this full screen for now. I could do that if it doesn't interfere. So the as I stated earlier, the title of this talk is called Sumerians, Thickness and the Inability to Read the Room, a response to Kamjiverse. Again, so this isn't my first time addressing him. He has as I stated at the beginning, he has a tendency, he is consistent of displaying his inability to comprehend the most basic of things, right? So we're going to just move forward with our conversation. So here is the post from my old account, uh, and again, this account here was, I hadn't had access to this account. So for you to find this a year later and want to respond shows that you were just looking for something to something to argue against, right? And more than likely it was Chuck Morgan, um, who went to this post, because he has a habit of misunderstanding stuff too, um, and it's just boggles my mind that grown men still have comprehension issues. Right. So here is the post. I say, how do I know that the ancient Sumerians were black and from the South? Because of their vocabulary. I'm just going to leave this right here. You can take it how you want. And so then I provide three terms: Sumerian cool, heavy, thick, and sexually mature. And then Chiluba Kole, or Kola, meaning adult and mature. And then the Yoruba word pon, meaning ripe, or nikpon, uh, the derived form meaning thick. So what I'm showing here is a relationship between the concept of thickness, heaviness, maturity, adulthood, right? And so with that, I made I posted these two sisters, these African American sisters. To my knowledge, they're African American, and but there is no claim whatsoever as he did. So I think he said, yeah. So 13 seconds into his video, he makes a statement based on the curves and thickness of American black women. They, meaning the black women of America, descend from ancient Sumerians. Nowhere in this do I even mention African American women. I have the picture here showing thickness and the like. So this is not meant to be a um, a serious text because uh, anybody who has actually read my scholarship on this knows that my argument is not that the Sumerians are black. And this is how I know that Chuck Morgan is behind this because, he has a comprehension issue. He's slow because you tell him this 100 times and he still tries to argue that this is your argument, right? So I'm not one of those who argue that the Sumerians were black. What I argue is that the Sumerian language was brought to what is now what was then called Sumer, what is now called Iraq, by Black African people. It was a major trade language that was adopted by other natives from around the area and spoken. The natives, the Proto-Sumerian folks were absorbed into the population. They were a minority, but the language lived on, right? And there's many different tests, linguistic tests that we can do that demonstrates that this is in fact the case. And I argue that Sumerian is a bridge to understanding the migrations of Africans out of Africa and the creations of both Proto-Semitic and Proto-Indo-European languages, right? So this is why anybody who knows me and my post know that this is halfway joking here in terms of the relationship to thickness, but nowhere did I make a claim that African American women descend from the ancient Sumerians. Where he got that from, I have no idea. So not only does this person have comprehension issues, he's a liar. You just make up arguments that nobody even said or made, right? And this is why he will never be a good scholar, because it takes integrity and honesty to do scholarship, and this is something that he lacks, right? So um but we are going to address in this conversation the linguistic piece and the arguments that he made in the video itself. So just so that you get a close up of the sisters that I'm showing here, and the thickness, right, and the beauty of these sisters. So just so you can have it on your timeline, right? So the the where I got this from, the cool, heavy, thick, sexually mature, is from the Sumerian Lexicon, version 3 by John A. Halloran. Now, he is an independent scholar but he studied Sumerian under several Sumerologists out of UCLA, right? And and right now I'm in the University of Pennsylvania museum library, right? And so uh, I visit here for the uh, Sumerian artifacts when you go to the library, as well as not the library, when you actually go to the museum, as well as the Egyptological artifacts and things there. So I study both, right? And then of course you have to come to the library itself when you want to get those texts that aren't in PDFs and the like, right? So so the the term under consideration comes from this lexicon. So if there's a PDF version that you can, there's three ways that you can get it. It's the PDF version that you can download from the site. There's a web version. So this is all on the web on this web page, as well as the print version. So if you go to the PDF version, this is what I have highlighted here: cold, heavy, thick, sexually mature, to bring together, to unite. Um, and so you can see it's polysemic, as we would say. Um, and so if you go to the next slide. If you go to the print copy, this is what you'll see here: coal, handle, pleasure, ornament, to bring together, to unite, to collect, glean, to roam, run. And then you have the adjective heavy, thick, sexually mature, right? And so this is what I connect to the word, the Chiluba word kole, which means adult, mature, hard, and has some other meanings as well. And so I don't make these comparisons arbitrarily. As many of you know, I've been doing lexical comparisons between the ancient Sumerian language, ancient Egyptian, which are called Chikam, as well as other African languages, um, especially with Bantu. And so the the connection between Bantu languages and the Sumerian has basically at this point about over 100-year history, right? Um, and it is the only language group that that many scholars independently come back to and say that Sumerian is definitely related to Bantu languages, Proto-Bantu especially, right? Um, but that's a different conversation for a different time. So, you got to understand this concept of a semantics. So, a semantics deals with the way that a speech population creates words and identifies it with concepts in reality or nature or whatnot. So it's the way that a people maps concepts to words, right? So um, let me do that real quick so y'all can see fully. So let's take for example this word pesh in the Sumerian language. So this is coming from the Pennsylvania online Sumerian dictionary. So that's usually abbreviated as PSD, right? So PSD 1 and 2. So there's a second version of the online dictionary uh, uh, from the University of Pennsylvania, right? So this word pesh here is a word meaning to be thick, to thicken, to be wide, to swell, to bloat, also to give birth to be pregnant, pregnancy, grandson, descending, seedlings, innards, to breathe, to gather, right? All the same in many contexts, many of the same meanings that we saw with the other form, and that's because this is a dialect variant actually of the same word, um, and but the linguistics would be would take us too far from our focus today. So we'll have to address that in another time, right? But the point here is to show you that the underlying theme is to grow and to get wide, to get big. And from that, you get this concept of pregnancy, because of course, a woman's stomach gets bigger as a result of being pregnant. And then other variations of it means to give birth to, and the like. So there's some extended meanings, but the extended meanings are there because Sumerian, as a result of becoming a lingua franca and a trade language in Iraq, it lost much of the grammatical morphemes, the Bantu grammatical morphemes that, change, for example, verbs to nouns or nouns to verbs in their prefixes and suffixes. And as a result of that, it appears that these words are polysemic when in fact there is a common core root, and there are derived meanings that emerged as a result of these morphemes. But once the morphology was lost, the root appeared to have the same meaning as the derived forms, and that's how you get the appearance of polysemy in much of Sumerian. And this happens with trade languages all around. So a good example of this is Lingala in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the reason why Lingala did not lose most of its grammatical morphemes is because it was surrounded by Bantu languages that had grammatical morphemes. So they were used to this feature, and so this feature stayed. But this was not the case in the Middle East. So um, they just reduced the language to its barest minimum, and this is how you get a lot of the phonological changes and morphological changes that happen as a result of this migration and settling by these African people. But so I just want to put that on your mind. So what we also have to understand is that there are different variations of the same word in the language, as I mentioned earlier. And so that kul that you saw in that first dictionary entry is cur in another dialect, right? So that cur, meaning to be thick, to be massive, is also given as gur. So we have three forms of the same word: kul, cur, and gur, right? So when we go to and this is the Mark E. Cohen and Annotated Sumerian Dictionary, right? To be massive, to be fat. It also means to be full to capacity, to be important, to be sturdy, because the concept of bigness, fatness, wideness, heaviness is also gives derived meanings of importance, uh, like in especially in politics. So like a chief, a leader, or whatnot, a king, and also to be sturdy, fixed, and firm. Right. All of these are derived meanings, and so this is also a lesson in semantics, right? So you see that these three words are the same. So L becomes R in the second consonant position, and K and G interchange. So in linguistics, we call these allophones. So the R and L and the G and K can switch in many words and the meanings not change. So phonologically they are allophones of each other, right? And so it also then ger is a homonym to a word vulva, and this ger form vulva, also has a variation gal, meaning female genitals, vulva, right? So you can see how for the Sumerians, they can uh, look at things in a certain way because of homonyms in the language, right? So, these, when you're studying the Sumerian, when you're studying any language, regardless, you have to be able to do an internal analysis so that you know what variations of terms and morphemes exist in the language, and the sound laws or the phonetic environments that give rise to certain sound changes, right? So uh, so what is happening here is that we, you know, you have individuals who don't understand the process of how comparative linguistics work, who summarily dismiss conversations or conclusions regarding the relationship between ancient Sumerian language, for example, and Bantu and ancient Egyptian and the like, because they don't have the skill set to be able to properly evaluate the arguments and claims, whether they're made by independent scholars or people associated with certain institutes and the like. They just don't have the skill set. So they can only thrive off of emotion and their inability to read the room or comprehend what is being said. And this is what we consistently find with Chuck Morgan and Kamjiverse when it comes to the Sumerian. We had our good brother, uh, what is his name? I forget his name that fast. Garfield, I'm sorry. Our good brother Garfield, who, when he and I were supposed to have a debate on whether the ancient Egyptians were black, he tried to sidestep our debate and introduce a new debate with some other round. I don't even forgot his name already. Um, who was going to try to argue against me on the relationship of or a Sumerian being a Bantu language. Another argument that I ain't claim, right? And so it's but he canceled an hour before we were supposed to do the actual debate. And so I anytime anybody has opposition to my points, I always challenge them to, if you don't agree with me, find you the top scholar in who you do believe, and let me and him or me and her have this conversation, because they're not qualified in order to make arguments for or against anything. And so there's a reason why they haven't been able to produce these people, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to contend and demonstrate and show your work. And you can't lean on your degree certificates. You have to demonstrate that what I'm arguing is false, and they can't do that, right? So for example, right, so if we take that word cool to be heavy to honor a person, and these entries primarily come from the uh, University of Pennsylvania online dictionary, Sumerian dictionary, right? So I'm comparing this now with the isiZulu language, which is a Bantu language out of South Africa. And so we're going to see a consistency here, because when we're comparing languages, what matters the most is the non-accidental sound meaning correspondences between two or more languages, right? To the point where you cannot argue that the similarities that we are observing are the result of um, chance coincidence, right? And we do this by showing, the forms side by side. So like this cool to be heavy to honor a person matches up with isiZulu kula, grow, increase, develop, mature, grow up, Kulu, big, large, chief, important, main, principal, senior. Kulile, be grown, be mature, be adult. So we're seeing that even with the other from the other dictionary forms, the ones that we see here in the Bantu have all the meanings um, as associated with what we find in these Sumerian dictionaries, right? And so remember that kul, or the K in the initial consonant position, also interchanges with G. And so we know that there's a dialect variant gal, to be big, great, to be senior, to be retired, former, to be mature, of male animals, older, goblet. It's in this phrase here, gal la anzu, zu meaning to know. And so the phrase together means wise, knowing, which is consistent and all exists within a semantic field of what we're comparing here in isiZulu. So what we're going to notice here is that in the initial consonant position, the ancient Egyptian or Chicam K or G corresponds with the aspirated K sound, um, or aspirated voiceless velar K in isiZulu. And then in the second consonant position, L matches with L. Right. So let's see if this is consistent. So we're going to go to the next row. In I'm sorry, and this is actually labeled wrong. So this, um, even though it says Chicam right here in the top corner, it is not Chicam. It is Sumerian. So this first row are Sumerian words compared to isiZulu. I don't know why I have Chicam there. I need to correct that. So so we have in Sumerian, kul, a plant, a weed. isiZulu, ukula, weed. And notice that we even have the same vowels in these words, right? It's not always the case, but that is important that in many of these examples, we even have matching vowels. So, kun, ladder, stairs. Un cuelo, imicuelo, ladder. Cool, handle, hoe. It doesn't, a matching form doesn't exist in isiZulu, but a matching form exists in Chiluba in the form of quata. The verb form, to catch, to take, grasp, hold, succeed, capture. And then chikwachilu, handle, or lukasu, hoe. All right. And there is, how should I say? Um, there is uh, independent sound correspondences for T and L, or T and in Bantu, and then L or R in Sumerian in terms of their matching. But this can also, because isiZulu does have a word for wood, which could also possibly be the actual correspondence in isiZulu. So we'll get to that in a minute. But kun, to shine brightly, Kanya, to shine. And so it should be noted that L and N also interchange in Sumerian. And this last one, kush kush, a unit of length, also equals forearm in volume, which corresponds to isiZulu, unkono or imikono, foreleg, arm, and an additional meaning of sleeve. Now, the kush and kono seem different, but the sh sound in Sumerian also interchanges dialectically with in as in Nancy. In Sumerian language itself, the same thing also happens in Egyptian, and in terms of sh and in as in Nancy, there's an interchange of dialect interchange and or correspondence set with those same sounds. Uh, and I showed that in the last video that we did on Sumerian. So I'm not going to uh, do that here, as that lesson will take a while as well. So, um, So we're going to move forward from here. So, but this is consistent with other. But I just wanted to throw that in there. But even with the last the second consonant, we see that even the first consonant is still consistent with all the other K's and that we have observed previously. So, you know, this is how you demonstrate, and these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples of this. So, as I said earlier, R and L's also interchange in Sumerian. So, we are going to look at some correspondences with that second consonant and see if we find some consistency in Isizulu. So we have the word ker, that means log or wood, and then we have ukuni, wood, firewood in Isizulu. So this is the word that I said that may actually correspond to that form that we substituted with chiluba, if that is not correct, right? So going to the next line, we have kur kur, a reduplication, and then kur kur or kurkuku. The second syllable or the second consonant is lost, especially in rapid speech in the reduplication. So in Isizulu, we have isikukula. So it too is reduplicated, just like we see the kur kur in the Sumerian. And so remember that even though you see chikam at the top here, it is Sumerian. So that's a mistake that's on my part. But this is Sumerian in the first column here. So even in Isizulu, the Bantu language, it is for the word flood, it is cool and reduplicated. So that's important as well. So we have kad and kadkad, meaning to open, which corresponds to the noun form isikala, izikala, meaning gap, opening, open space, white space, vacancy, mountain pass, right? And note that D's and R's interchange and correspond in Sumerian in the second consonant position, and R and L interchange and correspond in the second consonant position in Sumerian as well. So let's go to the next one. So we have kid, meaning to pluck out, to remove, and we have gid, meaning to drag, tow a boat upstream, to tighten, to pass along, transfer, draw up a document, to flay a dead animal, to milk, to unsheath, to pull out, to haul earth, right? So we have two forms of the same word, and we can tell that the change of the initial consonant from which in this case is voiceless, voice versus voiced. So kid, the voiceless velar consonant, and then we have g, the voiced velar consonant. And so which corresponds to Isizulu ka, meaning to draw water out, to pluck off fruit and vegetables, to pull out, for example, flowers. And we can see that the second consonant is missing in Isizulu, but it's still present in Chiluba. So it's kula in Chiluba, to pluck out, to pick. And then we have a different variant of the same word that is also reduplicated. So it's koka in Chiluba Bantu language, right? So, meaning to pull, to drag, to attract. And so if we go to the next line on the table, we see, or the next row in the table, we have this word cur, which is also the second form is ku, like the Isizulu word above. It too is missing the second consonant. So cur ku, meaning to pronounce a slave free in the Sumerian language, and to deliver, right? Which corresponds to kulula, to free, to release, to set free, to deliver from bondage, exempt, loosen, untie, right? So you can see in all these forms that I'm showing you here, I don't have a wide semantic scope. All the words match, and there's expanded nuance to them, but you could not argue that these are different meanings of any form, right? So giri and giri ilu, a cry, a lament, respectively, corresponds to isizulu kala, cry, isikala, isikalo, um, isikalo and izikalo, cry, scream, lamentation, wailing, complaint, plaint, protest, right? And so because K and G interchange, we can do a whole series with just G in the initial consonant position, and it's still going to correspond. You see in each one of these that the G's correspond to the same KH sound in the isiZulu forms. And then we can see that in the second consonant position, whether it's R, D, or L in the second consonant position in Sumerian, in isiZulu, it corresponds to L and N. And in Proto-Bantu, what is isiZulu L, Proto-Bantu had D. So in this case, the cod forms, the kid, gid forms are closer to the original forms in Proto-Bantu than those with R or L in either isiZulu or Sumerian, right? So we see the same thing with this series here. So galam, to be skillful, elaborate, clever, to make artfully. Ningalam, skill. And so we have in isiZulu ikono, amakono, ability, capability, skill, dexterity, competency. In Chiluba, makenda, skill, ability, right? And then we have galam, staircase, step of a ladder, a geographical feature. And then we have unquelo, imiquelo, ladder, isiquelo, isiquelo, ladder, stairs, stairway, staircase. Exact same forms. And the G and the L consonants in sequence match what is predictable based upon our previous correspondences. So what's missing here in isiZulu is what would correspond to the or the M in as far as a third consonant in these forms in Sumerian, right? But that's not a factor, because when we consistently have these three consonants in order, they correspond in isiZulu and other Bantu languages to the first two consonants. So this either lets us know that in Sumerian that it is a suffix that is lost in isiZulu, or it corresponds to another suffix that just isn't in the dictionary forms, right? Which we believe is the latter, because the M consistently corresponds to ng, a verbal suffix in Bantu. But I noticed when I was doing this research for this third one here, galam, meaning reed, I didn't, isiZulu has another word for reed. And so, but chiluba, again, still is consistent. Chikola cola, straw, a dry stalk of corn or millet. And so, words for reed or rush also correspond to words for straw. And so this is why this is this cane or cane, right? And so in this Greek word that I have here in this Sumerian, and I've labeled it correctly this time in the table, this Sumerian form, the word kalami in Greek. So I had to look at this and see, okay, is the Sumerian word a loan word, or did the Greeks borrow this word, kalami, because it has the same vowels and everything, right? Galam in Sumerian and kalami, Cain and reed in the Greek, right? So I'll start looking through some publications, and I have this one here, Etymological Dictionary of Proto-Germanic, right? And it has a very interesting entry. So, what is kalami in Greek is in Proto-Germanic halma, blade of grass. In Old Norse, halmer. Old English, helm. English, halm. Old, is it Old Scotch? Ham, Dutch, ham. Old High German, ham. German, ham. From Indo-European, kolmo. Um, and I forgot what many of these short words are, especially this CS here, slama. Um, and then we have in Russian, saloma. And I don't know what this one, South Crete, I don't know, slama, straw, Old Prussian, salme, Latvian, salmis, Latin, colmus, reed. Again, from Proto-Indo-European, kolmo, and we see, and then kolme, and then we have in Greek, kalamos, Cain, again from this proto-reconstruction here. And so it says probably related to Helman, helm, rudder, through a more primitive meaning, Cain. For example, Dutch, helm, sedge, morum grass. I forgot what this da means, but hejalme, and then hejalmer in Icelandic, bent grass, moram grass, represents an E grade formation. Helma from Hel, um, and Helmo, formerly identical to the Lithuanian Kelmas, tree stub. All these forms go back to a Proto-Indo-European blotting M stem, Helm, Kalem, genitive Helmos. The Baltic forms of non-palatal K arose in the zero grade roots in front of the resonant. And somebody who's an expert in Proto-Indo-European is going to have to um, teach me how to pronounce these correctly in these other languages. But you see here that this goes to Proto-Indo-European. So as I said in the beginning, it's stuff like this that allows me to demonstrate the evolution of the China into African languages that moved into the Middle East, that mixed with the indigenous languages in the Middle East and in Mesopotamia, and how that gives birth to Semitic and Proto-Indo-European, from these different convergence processes. And Sumerian was just the last of the languages of the China Intu languages that were able to survive into history, into written history. But it ultimately, in terms of the original speakers of the language, was overwhelmed by the dominant people in that area, right? So, and this is partially why I say that Sumerian is a bridge to understanding the evolution from the African languages, the continental African languages, to the birth and expansion of Indo-European, which is more so is two primary arguments: the Mediterranean, um, the argument versus the Black Sea, north of the Black Sea, in the Caucasus Mountains area. So that's an ongoing debate in Indo-European linguistics. So we don't have time to go through that today. But you know, of course, the primary forms that we see in the African languages are usually going to be consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, or consonant, vowel, consonant, or consonant, vowel as a result of shortening. So in the Igbo language, is okpeti, stick, cane. Varying is nkpisi. In Yoruba, okpa, shaft, cane. In the Fon language, po, cane. In the Dombe Bantu language, Inkoli, cane. In the Hausa language, kara, stem, cane, rush. In Egyptian, karesh, koresh. And so that looks like a number three is a nasalized uvula trill. It's an R type sound. So it's we're tentatively pronouncing it as karesh. And remember that even in Egyptian, that sh corresponds to the nasal N. And then we have in Chicam this other form, this khaneb, reed stalk, alpha grass bundle, bunch, bokriet, and R is an N interchange. And so what we have here is what we call a nasal assimilation to the following B. And so we see an original two consonant form, khare or khara, meaning rush or reed pen, right? So we can see where that third nasal bilabial consonant comes from. We can see this form here in Egyptian, and so it exists in M form as an M stem instead of a B or mba that we see in Sumerian and in the Indo-European languages, right? So it seems to be fossilized by this time in the Sumerian language, but it exists with or without, at least in Egyptian, with the voice bilabial uh, either stop or, nasal consonants, right? So, but that's taking us a little off track, but just to show that example for this last, here. So this is the symbol for voice pharyngeal fricative. Doesn't mean that that's exactly the sound that existed in Egyptian, but just showing that that sound also corresponds to K and KW in African languages. This is just one. I'm just using the Igbo language for example. So we have linen cloth, and then we have aqua cloth. See qua meaning to sew. This form here meaning column, pillar, or beam. Ku stand, set, okwe, a kind of tree. Lid, either to a coffin or a box. Ku, cork. Ukuchi, oku, stopper, cork cover. Ku, cover with lid, invert, etc. This is kariyit, temple, shrine, generally, which corresponds to Igbo oku, meaning home, shrine. This form, hari, meaning rich, heavy, plentiful. Oku, wealth, riches, possession, inheritance. This one meaning great or large. Okay, big size. And then again, kori, glowing fire. Auku, fire, heat. Right. So these are the kinds of correspondences. You got to establish the sound laws, and to be able to demonstrate your arguments. So anybody trying to argue against this would need to show how this is not the case, right? And so this is mathematics. So what we're doing is showing our work in mathematics. So I'm a scientist, so demonstration beats conversation. We don't believe anybody's word. Demonstrate it, right? So we're going to do some other sound interchanges in the Sumerian. So as I said earlier, the D and R in Sumerian in the second consonant position interchanges. So a good example is this word could, kur, ku, with the second consonant lost, to cut off, to breach, to separate, harvest, divide, divert, etc., etc. The point here is just showing a DR second consonant interchange, right? So these are all Sumerian words here, right? So this word ngiri, foot, becomes kul, meaning to run, and then we have gur, meaning runner. So the so this symbol that you see here in the top left corner, that stands for the nasal velar, voice nasal velar, as in king, that Latin, that ng sound. That's what that is. And so we already established that K and G interchange, but I just want to show you the different evidences for these interchanges that I'm talking about, that I'm not just making this stuff up. So kid, a reed mat or a woven object. Kira, a designation of mats. Gir, a mat. Girgi, reed strip. And that word gi is another word for reed, right? Ngali, a bowl, yellow mineral paste. Kal, I did. When I have id here, it means the same. So this is actually the same when you go to the University of Pennsylvania online Sumerian dictionary. These is just all in the same entry. So they're not even in a different part of the dictionary. It's in the same entry. So in Gali, Kal, Gali. So the next one, ka, to tie together, to itch, scratch, to weave a mat. A different form of that is kara. A different form of that is gar. So you can see DR interchange, KG interchange. Then we have a different form, ger, meaning to yoke, harness, to bind, the same semantic field. And so we had that word ker, meaning to be thick, to be big, to feel big, to be arrogant, to thicken, ger. Same, it's just a different variant of the same word, and we already established that. Like zeb, to be good, to be sweet, to be fresh, to be aromatic, that means smell good, to sweeten goodness, good thing, to repay, to satisfy. And it can also be given as Doug or Duke. So we have B, G, and Q interchange, and then Z and D interchange. But we can also see in this other one, this is a variant, cuckoo, cood, to be sweet, honey, sweet, to be good. Different variations of the same word. And then we have ngesh, decision, which also corresponds to kash, and gesh, same as what we see in these forms here in terms of the different variations. So, it's when you're studying Sumerian from a linguistic point of view, not simply a philological point of view. Philological meaning you're just reading text. But when you're doing comparative studies in terms of language, you have to do it on two fronts. You have an internal um, reconstruction process, and then you have an external reconstruction process and comparative process, right, to other languages outside of the dialect forms that you find within the primary language that you're doing your comparisons. So we go to the next slide. So that I want to show a little bit more of that ZD and BG correspondence, and we also see ZT and ZTS in this word for small, and zeg and shum, to give. So also corresponds to N and Z. But notice that they all correspond. For example, Z, which would also include D and T, and S and Sh, correspond to the J and D in ancient Egyptian, right? And the B and G correspond to M and N. And then R in the second consonant position corresponds to the S and D in Proto-Bantu. And then Ng and M again corresponds to B in Egyptian. And I have more of examples of these, because when I do my comparisons, I try to at least have 20. But for the sake of you being able to see all of these, I just pick some of the best ones to show y'all. But trust and believe, I always usually try to strive for a minimum of 20 examples of certain sound changes or sound correspondences. All right. So, this is why the axiom of transitivity is important. That is, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Right. So if J in ancient Egyptian is equivalent to Z, and Z in Sumerian. Like if the J in Egyptian is equivalent to Z in Sumerian, and Z in Sumerian is equivalent to D in Sumerian, then Egyptian J is also equivalent to Sumerian D. And so that's what these correspondences demonstrate, right? And it would be the same thing for T and for S and for sh, right? All these are logically equivalent, right? So, um, you know, I don't want to drag this too long, but this is, you know, they have to have an answer for all of this, right? Like like I would spend days and days showing you demonstrations of correspondences between Sumerian and African languages. But what I the reason why I'm showing you this here now is to show you the consistency of, because you know, show demonstrating something between two languages is never good enough. It is always best to show with three or more languages simultaneously. So we can see from this example here that you may need to make your screen wide, you know, if you can't see these um, well, right? So I'm comparing Sumerian, Chiluba, Isizulu, and Chicam or ancient Egyptian. Now, Sumerian and Egyptian, as we're going to see, is going to have the most diversity in terms of forms because they're the older forms. And so Chiluba and Isizulu are comparatively younger than these languages. So theirs are going to be more, and they're closer together in terms of relationship. So they're going to be pretty consistent um, in Chiluba and Isizulu than with Sumerian and Chicam. But you're going to see that regardless, in all, there's still a consistency that is undeniable. So L in Sumerian also interchanges with N, and we already saw D and R and L earlier, so that should be no surprise here. So let's just start from the first row. So we have Sumerian lam, to flourish, to make, grow luxuriantly, and then they change the vowel, and it has a different it has a slightly different meaning but within the same semantic field. So to fruit, to be fruitful, to be full, replete, satisfied with, to be grown, tall, to thrive, to be fructified, to shine. And I think that to shine is just a totally different word, right? But it's all on the same entry. So um, but you can see that the underlying thing is like the thickness, which comes from a root meaning to grow, to expand, to increase. And so a variant of that concept is to be fruitful, right? To expand, to, and then you have, you know, derived meanings of to flourish, to be luxuriant. You know, you have luxury because you have much of something, right? And so it corresponds to chiluba nima, enriched, to rise, gaining weight, being heavy, being significant, intensify, buneme, bunema, prestige, influence, law, wealth, dignity, worth, prestige, entitled, importance, influence, consideration. Numa, protrude, right? Same consonant sequence, right? And it should be noted that, you know, with Chiluba and Isizulu, they still have the grammatical morphemes that provide the distinction, whereas Sumerian lost it. And we'll see, like Isizulu, Zimu, of growing large, of growing stout, right? Which corresponds to uh, Chikam, Shiraru, worth, suitable weight. Next line, Nam, fate, destiny, determined order, will, testament, concern. Chiluba, Chiama, good luck, good fortune, success. Isizulu, Zimu, of good fortune, of pleasant occurrence, which corresponds to Jiluba, Shararu, again, destiny, good fortune. Edim, to be heavy, to be important, which matches Proto-Bantu dim, to be, or dem, to be heavy, which in Chiluba is Nima, because D becomes L. And in this instance, the L becomes N through a process of assimilation. So the L assimilates to the following M. So the L becomes N in that process. So that's why you have N in the Chiluba, but these are allophonically the same, and logically the same as L here. And remember that the L's come from D. So that's why, but in this, the D stands here because it's followed by I, right? But Nima in this next one, to be heavy, get heavier, gain weight, to be important, intensify, get rich, and then Bunema, prestige, influence, law of righteousness, etc. Isizulu, Nzima, D becomes Z, Nzima, heavy, weighty, important, serious, severe, difficult. Isi Nzima, Izzy Nzima, weightiness, heaviness, prestige, dignity. Uzime, well built, fully limbed person, male or female, standing well on his pins, right? Which becomes in Chiluba in two forms. Shararu again, weight, worth, and then Simi, respected. Simi S is a partial reduplication. It's really Sim, seniority. Sim again, partial reduplication, to become old, to be old, right? Because they all come from that root meaning to expand. So, for anyone who wants to argue, I dare them to use the same Sumerian forms over here on the left, and to find three random languages in the world and see if they can consistently come and establish these sound laws, right? We go to the next one. It's the same thing. Alim, Elim, Alum, bison, heavy, important. Chiluba, Inyama, animal, beast. Isizulu, Ianzima, Izianzima, black bull, black ox. Shikam, Zimmer, wildlife. Simer, wild bull. Zimarit, wild cow. Simsimiti, an animal. And then, of course, that other form, Shara, meaning an animal as well. We have Chilim, darkness, in the Neo-Assyrian period. And then we have this word mess, which is the syllabic inverse of this word here. We don't have time to show this, but I just wanted to put it here for record. But they also have blackness, black spot, black wood, because one of the things that you're going to discover in the China into languages is that, in the proto language, there was two dialect forms that that much of the words are inversed in the other dialect. But over time, the two dialects mixed in China into, and many of the language have inherited both forms of the word, doublets in the language. And this is exactly what you see in Sumerian, which helps to prove its relationship to African languages as well. But that's a different conversation for a different time. In Chiluba, Chijima, Jima, Chidima, Chijima. And actually that D, we're saying D, but in Chiluba it's pronounced like a J. So when you hear native speakers, they'll say Chijima, Chijima, obscurity, darkness. Lujimba, ba, darkness, shadow. But Isizulu, Inzima, black, dark skin. And then in Chikam, Zimar, darkness. You see the consistency of the forms here in the correspondences. Idim, weak, help. Dim, to be helpless. Lema, Chiluba, have a bodily defect, be handicapped, paralyzed, crippled, lame. Bulema, handicap, paralysis, deformity. Chilema, mistake, defect, fault, deformity, vice. There isn't a direct Zulu form. This may be related. I'll just put it here for record, but I'm not counting this as a cognate of the other forms we see here. But on Chiluba, we have ser, so the sh becomes ser, weak, all same semantic field. And, so we count these. Dim, post, pillar, pole, mast, staff. Chiluba, Nimi, Nyim, meaning king. And then Isizulu, Uzimi, walking stick, walking staff, walking cane, center supporting pole, breadwinner, one of the heads or pillars of a family. Chikam, Semeh, branch stick, and then Samadat, a scepter, Zemeru, branch twigs, Zemerayit, hogging beam, and then the other consistent form, sher, stick for applying black eye paint. Now, how this word king comes to be, and I just, well, if you have Nesubiti, which came out in 2016, I talk about this, but I have an article coming out in this. It's a peer-reviewed article in a text that is coming out on Africology as a discipline, and I'm talking about the etymology of the name Osiris. And one of the things that I discuss in both of the texts is this notion in African languages where the concept of the king, or words that we're using for kings, actually derives from words meaning tree or pillar or pole. And because the king it's a praise name, it's a metaphoric title, because the king is just like the father of a home. And the father of a home, the head of the household, is seen as the central pillar. So if you ever built or seen quote unquote huts in Africa, many of them have a center pole that for which the thatch and everything else is connected to and surrounding. So it's that center pole which keeps up the entire structure. And that is how the king or head of household or is seen in traditional Africa. And so the sound correspondences inform us that this is exactly the case here in Africa. So this is why this especially is included here in Uzime, in terms of walking stick, walking cane, center supporting pole, and it means breadwinner, because the breadwinner is the person who everybody leans on for support in the house. So this is where this concept comes from of a man being the breadwinner, because the man is seen as the center pole of the house that holds it up. And that becomes a word for father or king or chief in many African languages. All right. So next, and this may be the last, yeah, it is the last slide in terms of our comparisons. So we have dim, binding, not bond. And Chiluba, lema, nema, neme. Band, bow or spring, nail, attach, bend, bandage, bulging, and tie, right? Or to tie. It's Zulu, we don't have a direct match, but in Chikam, Zemer, as in Zemer, or what we say Zimatawi, the uniting of the two lands. This word means to unite, to join. And then we have Ime, wet nurse, and then we have Dim, to check, which corresponds to Lama. The first consonant is missing, and we don't have time, but we have a whole lesson in correspondences on the first consonants missing in Sumerian, and how we can tell that the first consonant is missing, and that that first vowel is not grammatical, right? And so we have Lama and Chiluba, monitor, ensure, observe, conserve, Mulami, guardian, guard, and Dami, a nanny, right? which corresponds to Chikam, sim, attention, care, help to succor, dem, meaning a corpse, in Sumerian, which corresponds to Isizulu, umzumba, body of a man or animal, Isidumbu, dead body, corpse. So two sound correspondences there. And then Sumerian Nam, Lord, which corresponds to Chiluba, Nyum, or Nyam, spirit or trance, and Isizulu, Umzimu, spirit, and Umzimkulu, chief or head of a family. And the corresponding form in Chikam is Kera, meaning rave, act up, to be in a trance, and then Kurid, meaning possessed one. Now, this one is going to be a little confusing because a few of these you're not going to see the correspondence. So, how does the word for Lord end up corresponding to words for spirit or trance, right? And so the isiZulu gives you the full context. So umzimu, spirit, and then the fuller form umzimkulu, kulu meaning, um, again, it still comes from those roots meaning to grow, to expand, to get older, right? So that's why I said chief or a head of a family, a lord, right? And so these are actually two words that's combined, the spirit of the elders, right? So it just becomes in Sumerian Lord, and in Chiluba, Nyum, Nyam, spirit or trance. But in the Egyptian, oops, sorry, gotta go back. In the Egyptian, the h sound here and the sh sound here interchanges. So you'll find in many internal comparisons that I've been able to do, you'll see that these interchange, right? So this is what allows us to use this form even when this form is missing, because there was a split in the language of Egyptian. And so that's why. So they kept the concept of spirit being possessed in trance. In Chiluba kept both spirit and trance. Um, Sumerian, in terms of this form, only kept the lord or chief aspect of the form. But ultimately, the concept of spirit, lord, or chief, it really derives from a root meaning an agent or one that is able to do or to act. That's all a spirit is an embodied agent. A chief or a king is a bodied agent, somebody who has been given the power to command others to do things, right? And so in reality, a king is what we would call a living ancestor. So that's what this really means in essence. This umzinkulu is a living ancestor, and that's a conversation for another time. But in my Aluja Volume 2, I discussed that, with the proper citations and sources that you can get an expanded conversation on that. And so just saying all of that, just doing this, giving this um, example here, because, you know, we constantly are in these debates about the relationship between Sumerian and Black African languages, but nobody wants to demonstrate their work that contradicts what I'm able to demonstrate. And just these few examples here eliminates all chance. And I have more, some of it published, some of it not published, right? And so the idea, for example, that going back to Kamjiverse and his stupidity, um, that I'm arguing that the ancient Egyptian, excuse me, that the African American women derive from Sumerians, and there's a relationship, a correlation to thickness and being sexual orientation and stuff like this is just dumb. I never made that correspondence. And so this is the kind of silliness that I have to deal with on a consistent basis, dealing with people who don't understand nuance, don't know when I'm serious, what I've actually published and written on the subject, versus me trolling people in you on my Facebook page, right? So, but one thing I will say is that uh, that thickness and them curves, them African curves, are definitely a feature of um, of ancient Egyptian artwork in many facets. And so this is one of Queen Nefertiti, right, from the 18th dynasty. And if you can see the anatomy from the side view on the right hand side, it is unquestionable. But you also got to understand even though I'm being stereotypical here, I'm not all the way, because it's an actual thing in terms of an African sub-Saharan body type, right? So what we see here with Queen Nefertiti is the same type of shape of woman that is common in places like Rwanda, right? That what you're seeing here on the left hand side, right? And so the the artwork and things that you see in ancient Egypt reflects these tropical limb proportions and body proportions that you find in quote unquote sub-Saharan Africa, right? And but that's a conversation for another time. And you'll know when I'm serious because I'm bringing actual artifacts from the place. And so it's not like I'm not going to show a West African or an African American sister and pass her off as an ancient Egyptian artifact, right? If I believe that they are descendants from ancient Egyptians or Sumerians, I'm going to say it. It's not going to be implied. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. I'm very direct, and so you don't have to worry about that. So, um, but to continue, there are some artifacts, some statuettes. These are one researcher considers them temple prostitutes in Babylonia. But if you look at these statuettes, you see some thickness, you see some shapeliness of these women that are depicted in this artwork. And I'm not making any arguments. I'm just saying that it's possible that they have some East African thickness DNA still in them in this time period for reference, right? But that's neither here nor there. I'm not making no arguments for or against, but it's worth some studying on who these Babylonian women are. And this is coming out of Sumer, probably a late period, but Sumer nonetheless, right? So with that being said, I do appreciate your time. So as we say, Inkwa Ngolo Vimpi, Uja Seneb, and until next time, peace.
Tokyo wanna know that Feeling like I dropped the draw for in car Uno. Came to kick the door with the game man judo. Pin game low, that's why they give me kudos. Inspired by the 3-0. 595 check it for pack light. Hit the turnpike, slide to a baseline. Gotta sound like I just hit the 8-5. Oh, I'm so ready. My enemies necessary. We gon' be legendary. Hold up. About to grow the payrolls. If you see the vision and you're with it, you should say so. Cause we about building, elevating the millions.
This program was created with the love and support of all our Patreon members and subscribers. If you are not a member yet and would like to see more content like this, consider becoming a member today. The link is in the description of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated.